Good morning, Grangers, and welcome to our first edition of AP Studio. Today we will be debating the topic, is cheerleading a sport? And our guest debaters this morning are Coach Whitfield and Coach Davis. Coach Whitfield will be arguing that cheerleading is not a sport. Ms. Davis will be arguing that cheerleading is in fact a sport. So in order to start off our discussion today, I think, let's start with the base question. How would each of you define a sport? Coach Whitfield, you can go first. You'll have 1 minute to answer.
I believe a sport is a physical activity that has organized practices. It has objective scoring, as well as it has, I believe I said structured practices, organized scoring, and a physical component to it. I think anything recognized by NCAA or the National Collegiate Athletic Association define them as things that are use those three criteria.
And Ms. Davis?
Same as Whitfield, but also take into consideration that GHSA would recognize cheerleading as a sport because we do have to follow GHSA regulations to even compete or perform. So definitely agree with the physical component, but also being committed to the sport.
Okay, so based on your definitions of sport, how would you argue that cheerleading is not or is a sport? Ms. Davis, we'll start with you this round.
Cheerleading is a lot. Like we've got our girls in the weight training room. They have, we have competition cheerleaders who have a 2-minute routine where our game day cheerleaders have a 3-minute routine nonstop. You've got football players and basketball players and soccer players who are running up and down a field, but we're doing that on a mat with 3 minutes nonstop. We've got to remember our choreography. We've got stunts. You've got girls who get injured. We're just as important as any other sport.
Coach Whitfield?
While I will not disagree with the physical component of cheerleading, I do believe it misses one simple criteria, and that is objective scoring. If we're going to say that cheerleading is a sport, why is breakdancing not a sport? Why is gymnastics is a sport, but why would we say like people that go out and dance and perform? There's a physical component, but there's not an objective scoring system. When you score a goal in basketball, the ball went to the hoop. When you score a touchdown, you cross the goal line. You kick a field goal, the ball goes through. When you score in golf, every stroke counts. But I believe the biggest problem we have calling cheerleading a sport is the subjective nature of it. You don't know, a few years ago, there was some, debate of whether they scored this point or whether they didn't with a few of the cheer routines. But if it's subjective, I think that disqualifies it from being a true sport. While I think it's a very important activity, and I think those girls work very hard, I think it's more of a support than it is a sport.
Ms. Davis, how would you respond?
I don't necessarily think that you have to look at scoring to consider something a sport. You could say that breakdancing and dancing is a sport. You're being judged for it. Yeah, gymnastics is definitely a sport, but guess what? You still have judges. I did gymnastics like all my life, and so did my sister. It's how we grew up. But we still get judged. Are those subjective? Yes, but you still see gymnastics as an Olympic sport. Those scores are also subjective.
I think once we opened the door with gymnastics, we lost the true nature of a sport being an objective scoring process. While I do believe those activities are very important, I do believe there's merit to people participating in those activities, and I think it's great to promote physical activity and competition. But at the end of the day, you cannot have a true sport without an objective scoring method. Yes, you can get points for, 5 people doing a pyramid, but, 2 different judges can score things differently. But when you're looking at a true sport, crossing the goal line, it doesn't matter. Ball going in a hoop, doesn't matter. Ball going in the hole with golf, doesn't matter. These are objective things, and I feel like if there's no measurable objective, then we get into the point where judging and we're starting to give everybody performance-based sports versus being objective-based sports, and I don't believe that's fair.
I respectfully disagree with you because think about how many times we've watched football together. how many arguments have you gotten in with just friends talking about if somebody scored a touchdown or if somebody intercepted a pass? Sometimes those calls can be subjective.
While those can be subjective, there's rules that clearly outline.
There's rules for cheerleading when we score for cheerleading.
If you can review things and crossing a goal line,
you can review things for cheerleading.
Well,
there's a reason why they video it and go back on it.
I've spent multiple hours at cheer competitions and watched multiple cheer routines, and when I get done, I have no idea who won.
Cheerleading is a college sport where you can get a scholarship for. If you need proof of that, you can talk to Mr. Bozeman or Mr. Pauly, who both cheered for Auburn University.
I don't know if we'd call them. I think they're athletes, and I think it's important that they're athletic, and I think they require a lot of physical exertion, a lot of practice, a lot of routine. But I think once you start bringing in judges, we're no longer a sport. Yes, you have people that officiate sports, but they're not judging the final scoring.
Well, you said gymnastics is a sport, but they have judges, just like cheerleading.
I think the gymnastics was the gateway that led us to believing that cheer is a sport. While I do not truly believe gymnastics should be a sport, I said once you open that door, we're starting to get new things. Like they tried out breakdancing in the Olympics last year. Didn't work out so hot for the sport, right?
Well, that's an interesting point because, just recently cheerleading was also approved as a competitive sport in the Olympics. So, taking that governing body that has recognized it as a sport and other, associations around the country, and of course they are split, having recognized it, who makes the final determination and why do you think they would if an activity is actually a sport?
I believe the next thing we'll do is we'll make theater a sport. There's physical activity, you have to memorize lines, and you can be judged on performance. Next, band will be a sport. There's physical activity, there's judges going into that. There's, where do we stop? At some point, we have to draw a line. I do believe cheerleading is an awesome activity, and I believe the origin of it came from supporting a sport, just like the band supports a sport. I don't believe they're in the same field. I think the objective versus subjective nature of scoring really determines if something's a sport or not.
Cheerleading is definitely not an activity. It is something that our girls and guys who do cheer have to train for pretty much all year. I mean, I know our season for game day ends in December, but those girls still need to be working out, especially if they plan to be on the team next year. I mean, it's a lot you have to do. I would love to see you try to be on that mat.
I was in the band, but is that a sport? I had to train, I had to practice.
But band falls under fine arts.
Performance-based from cheer is an art as well, it's just a performance.
So is football.
And we are nearing our time for today's episode, so I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds to kind of recap your summation, why you believe cheerleading is or is not a sport. And we'll start with you, Coach Whitfield.
While I believe cheer is an awesome activity, it gives kids the chance to express themselves, go out and build teamwork, strength, physical activity, I do not believe anything that's subjective in nature and judging should be considered a sport, be it cheerleading, be it theater, be it band, be it gymnastics, be it figure skating. I think those are awesome activities, but I do not believe they meet the objective criteria of scoring, which makes them negated as a sport.
I think you have to take scoring away from it. I think that's, of course, it's your opinion, but I think that cheerleading is a sport because of the strenuous physical activity and the organized and structured practices that we have. We have to work just twice as hard to get the score we want. We have to impress our crowd. We have to think critically about not just what we're going to do on the mat, but how we're going to show ourselves and prove ourselves that we can be at the top.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate your time, Coach Whitfield, Miss Davis. And Grangers, we'd like to know what you think about this topic. Is cheerleading sport or is it not? Be on the lookout for a QR code for you to be able to submit your opinion and cast your vote in our poll. Is cheerleading sport or is it not? And again, I'd like to say thank you to Miss Davis and Coach Whitfield for joining us in our very first episode of AP Classroom and today's debate on is cheerleading sport. Thank you guys. Until the next episode, go Grangers.